The Unstuck movement. I am your host, Rob Z. On this platform, I love to ask big questions because the bigger questions we ask in life, the bigger breakthroughs that we have in our life. And today, I have the powerful Barron Damon with us. Barron, I want to kick things off with a question that stems from when you were mugged back in college. So being mugged in college led you to this big breakthrough. How did God shake up you and shake up your life in that moment to lead you to the nonprofit and philanthropic, the nonprofit and philanthropic work that you do now? There we go. I got to it.
There we go. Rob, thank you for having me, man. I'm so happy to be here and have this conversation with you. You know, that question brings back a lot of memories for me because it was a very difficult time in my life. Here I am, you know, this kind of decorated athlete and just was kind of living life, enjoying, you know, you go to college. I was on an academic scholarship and I was like, man, this is pretty good. My parents put money in my account every week. And so I was living the dream. And I'm headed to my dorm after a campus party. And I heard these guys behind me. I heard somebody say, somebody's going to take a swim tonight. And I was walking at the time beside a reflection pond. And next thing I know, somebody came from behind me and bam, I mean, hit me in my face. And even when I look at myself now and I have these glasses on, it's a reminder because part of my eyesight was damaged as a result of that. And I took off running, Rob, and it was like, you know, just kind of running for your life, not knowing what was going to happen to you. My cousin was with me at the time and he went to the right, I went to the left. And then I noticed that one of the perpetrators was following me, chasing me, and I kind of stopped and we got into a big tussle. And as a result of that, the police came and put us both in the car and said, what's going on? And this guy said, this guy's talking about my mother. And of course, I had never seen him before. That was his way of kind of deflecting. And matter of fact, he was not even in the party because he wasn't a student. These young men were actually going around to different college campuses, just randomly picking people to hurt. And so I was in the wrong place at the right time. And as a result of that, I was really scarred from that particular incident. Nothing happened to the young man. I went to court and tried to press charges. Nothing happened. And it left me emotionally, mentally, just damaged. I went home for a couple of weeks and my grandmother said to me, she said, baby, don't go back to that school, you know, but of course I had to go back. I was a first generation of college student. So I was on mission, right, to complete this thing. But that caused a lot of problems because when I went back, I wasn't prepared for my exams and I completely bombed everything. I was put on probation. I lost my scholarship, and then my life just began to unravel. At that point, I tried to get back in school. They wouldn't let me. And then I just didn't know what to do. You know, we talk about being stuck. I was stuck. I didn't even tell my parents. Get this, Rob. I didn't even tell my parents that I had got kicked out of school because I was embarrassed, you know. I didn't want them to be stressed and worried about it. And I just didn't know what to do. And so I kind of ran. And at that point, I knew that God was speeding up in his pursuit of me. But I was always a person that was a little selfish, to be honest with you, didn't really care about other people like that. I just wanted to, you know, just have a nice car and get a great job or corner office and, you know, have my own business and make a lot of money. That's really what I cared about. And that was my total focus. And I believe, you know, God was saying, no, that's not what I'm calling you to do, son. I have some other plans for you. And as a result of that, I kept on trying to get back in school. They wouldn't let me, but I had an opportunity for an internship. And the internship was at the Columbia Urban League. I was in Columbia, South Carolina. And guess what the program was? Stop the Violence. So I was a program coordinator for Stop the Violence. And it seemed like a pretty good idea. But when I got there, it just reminded me, as I was working with kids, the trauma that I experienced, right? Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, I couldn't wait for it to be over, because I was like, let me just move on. I can put this on my resume and I can go about my business and kind of hopefully get back in school. And as a result of that, I remember going home the last day of this particular summer program. And I was like, whew, I'm so glad this is over. Let me get to my real life. And I remember hearing God say, this is you. But I remember thinking to myself, these kids really needed some help. They really needed some support. It just wasn't going to be me. And God said, no, that's not quite how we have it planned. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be doing that and helping them. And I ended up applying, going back to school, finishing my degree. And the only job I applied for was Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And so a national, international mentoring program. And that's the beginning of me being unstuck, because I realized I started caring about something greater than myself. Mm. And I needed that incident. Everybody doesn't have to hit rock bottom, because I did. There was some parts in the story I'm leaving out intentionally for the matter of time. But I mean, I hit pretty rock bottom. And it took a gracious, loving God to show me that there was a different way.
Wow, really interesting. Really interesting. And I love this because, this podcast is the Unstuck movement. It's about how we get unstuck from difficult places in our life. And one of those ways to get unstuck is to stop running and to face the thing that you've been being called to do. So I just want to shout out, first of all, the sponsor, the Connected Leaders Academy, who makes this podcast possible. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. So Barron Damon, a certified philanthropic coach and managing partner of BOLCC, specializing in strategic giving and philanthropy education. I said it a lot better right there than I did the first time. I got unstuck from that. So tell me about this. Go to Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Is that when you found yourself not running anymore and you started to step into that calling that God had to you? And how did it play out from being in Big Brothers and Big Sisters? How did that transform your journey?
Yeah, interestingly enough, they hired me. I was on a panel the other night talking to some incredible Duke students at Duke University, and I was telling them a little bit about my story. And I started out as a recruiter. That's what they hired me for, to recruit men. And they would also give me like a commission for every man that I brought in. And I thought that was pretty interesting, because here I am in this space where now I'm helping young men and young women who were having some challenges in life, but it allowed me to start really seeing other people's challenges. There's a lot of issues in our communities that a lot of times we turn a blind eye to. I remember being at the, my son probably was 3 years old at the time, and we were at the stoplight and we were getting ready to, light turn green, but there was a homeless guy and he's there with a sign. And my son said, he said, "Dad, what's that sign say?" And I said, "Son, he's homeless. He's having a tough time. He don't have a place to stay." And my son said, "Daddy, what we're going to do about it?" And I said, well, I felt something in the pit of my stomach. I was like, here's this 3-year-old kid asking me what we're going to do about it. I couldn't wait to get through the light, right? So I didn't have to deal with it. And like a good Christian, I said, "Son, we're going to pray about it." Right. But that was my way of saying I didn't want to deal with it. Right. Yeah. And I think that happens a lot. And for me, Big Brothers, Big Sisters allowed me to start dealing with it, on a daily basis, and being able to see the challenges and struggles that people really had in their life. And it made me just appreciate life. I developed empathy. I start caring about people more. And I wanted to help and serve in a different way I had never thought about serving before.
Yeah, I'm just writing something down right now because it just hit me like caring more means slowing down, right? Because and this is actually really good. Like, because when we slow down, oftentimes when we're trying to achieve something or trying to go somewhere, even if we don't have a direct vision, but we know we got to be somewhere, we'll ignore what people need or what people are going through because it's going to slow us down from where we feel like we have to be.
Yeah.
And so, and when you take the time to slow down, you're going to meet people where they're at, and you're going to have an opportunity to actually minister to people or to be with them and help them in that place. Even just being there with them or listening to them is helping them in that place that they're at. But we have to slow down to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so often in our society, we don't want to slow down. We don't want to take the time to put the brakes on to do that. And I would imagine big brothers and big sisters, I mean, that's what you have to do. You've got to take time out of your day to meet and hang out with the kids that you're assigned to and spend real time with them. Is that something that you ended up doing? Did you end up working with kids in the organization, or were you just you were just finding people to work with or to hang out with the kids?
Yeah, I ended up becoming, I didn't stay a recruiter very long. I started doing some, I was actually the VP of director of programs, and then became the vice president of programs and operations. And so I was
over the whole entire organization.
Yeah. And then eventually I was the interim president as I was transitioning a new president in. And so I was there for 6 years. But as a result of that, I was, I became a mentor myself. And it was interesting because I was doing a training for a bunch of volunteers, and I've trained thousands of volunteers over the years. Mm-hmm. And the one lady raised her hand and she said, Barron, can you tell me about your little brother that you're mentoring? Because here I am, telling people how great and wonderful mentoring is. And I said, my clever self, I said, all of these kids are mine. That was my way of kind of getting out, right? Not wanting to slow down myself enough to take on that next level of responsibility. And then I went home that night and I said, why am I not doing this? And I realized I had some of the same fears that they had around time and commitment, and how I could interact with somebody I didn't know. And I began to mentor. And it was life-changing for me. And I began to understand how important and impactful mentoring can be generational, right? It could be, you mentor a child, they grow up and they're going to do right by their children, but they're also going to mentor, right? And it can go on for generations. And so that's what happened to me. I was able to start mentoring myself, and it just made it crystal clear what I was supposed to do as a part of my life, not only just work for this organization, but also, mentor young men and women as a result of that.
Yeah, we model after what we see in our life. And if we don't have anybody who does mentor us, then we don't even know what that looks like to do it for somebody else. Yeah. So I can't even imagine the impact that would have to be a mentor for to be a big brothers and big sisters, to give them that example. That is huge. That has to be truly life-changing. I love that. That's really, really good. When we talk about philanthropy, this is going to be a basic, bare bones, ground level noob kind of question. But what does philanthropy mean to you in a technical sense? Because I feel like you hear the word a lot, but it's not. Maybe I haven't had anybody directly in my life who's lived out philanthropy in a defined way for me to get a great example of what it is. What does it mean to you?
What does it mean to me is what the dictionary says it is, right? And if you go to the dictionary, or, now you can go online, right? Obviously, it says philanthropy is the love of mankind, right? It's just that simple.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's why early in my life, I couldn't do philanthropy because I didn't have a love for people, right? When I developed this love for people, because I realized that God loved me. And so I was able to love in a different way, right? And so philanthropy means that I can remove, all these different filters that we do every day and look beyond, people's issues and challenges and their biases and prejudices, and I can still love them, because of the love that's in my heart. So So philanthropy is the love of mankind, and you just however you show that love, it could be your time, your talent, or your treasure. And so through those three ways, you can definitely be philanthropic. And that's what we talk about a lot, even on our podcast, how important it is for people to do the little things, those small things that people may not recognize and say, that's philanthropic. We actually have people to declare on the show, I am a philanthropist. And it's really empowering for them because they don't see themselves as that, because they see Bill Gates, they see Oprah Winfrey, they see Warren Buffett, they see all of these people who they say, wow, they're philanthropic. No, you are too. When you go read to Johnny in the school, that's philanthropic.
That's really, really helpful. So first of all, I love doing this show because I learn new things every day. I never knew that the definition was the love of mankind. That is beautiful. That's the definition of philanthropy. And that's where I was going with that question. Was it seems like something that rich people do. That's something that wealthy people do. They're philanthropists, but you can't do that whenever you're just starting out or whatever it might be. So that's inspiring to know that anytime we're out there helping somebody and loving others, we're being philanthropic in what we do. And that gives a much more broad scope to what the word means.
Yeah.
And that empowers me right now to know, like, as I'm going out in my daily life, to be a philanthropist, to be out there and lifting other people up, encouraging them. So how does this transition, right? Your life changes into being a philanthropic coach to creating the business of life CC, right? So you create a company that's all about the business of life and philanthropy. How do you get to this stage to now where you're coaching people and how to be philanthropic and where to put their money and to find the right organizations to tithe their money to?
Yeah. I love, Unstuck is Unstuck Part 1, Unstuck Part 2, Unstuck Part 3, right? There's different phases and levels to being stuck. And off camera, you and I were talking about how there was a particular time in your life. And so here I was I've been coaching. I'm a certified professional coach through International Coaching Federation. And I love coaching. I have executive clients that I work with, life coaching, business coaching, all of that. And I was like, wow, this is really great. And I enjoy it, but it's not something I want to do every day. And I was trying to figure out why not? Why do you don't want to do it every day? Besides the fact that we have multiple businesses and I do a lot of different stuff. But I realized that there was something that was still missing in the midst of me helping people. So one day, a couple of years ago, I think it was 22, we was traveling for the summer, doing a family trip, and we was in Portugal, having a great time. I get this message from this wealth advisor, and he says, Barron, I saw your information online. I want to talk to you. And of course, I thought that we get so much spam stuff, right? You don't know what's real and what's not. Yeah. And he said, I have this podcast, and it's called Family Bonds. And I would love for you to come and talk about how families can engage in philanthropy. And I was like, And so I got back home. I reached out to him. We ended up having a great podcast. And I remember thinking there was something, as I look at your lit, this flame, there was something that just started erupting in me. And I was like, ooh, this feels different. It feels different. And so I was talking to him. He said, Barron, there's somebody else I want you to meet. And he said, this guy has a lot of money and I think you can help him. And so I talked to him, and he's telling me of his story. He had substance abuse issues. And he said, I know exactly where I want to give my money to. Everybody don't know that. He knew his philanthropic why based on his situation, right? We help people discover that. So what ends up happening is I started realizing this was the place where God was moving me into. And that was, how can I connect people's dollars to connect their resources to people who really need it. Now, if you go back 5 years, we started our own donor advised fund. And so we were giving out scholarships to young people, 5 or 6 years ago. We were supporting nonprofits. We probably had a portfolio of 12 nonprofits that we were helping on a regular basis. And then 3 years ago, we started our foundation called the B.K. Damon Foundation. So we were doubling down on what we were doing. And so it was almost like the perfect storm. Here I am kind of doing this stuff personally with my family and sharing it from time to time. But here's an opportunity for me to do it on a bigger scale and find that niche market that became philanthropic coaching.
Fascinating. I love it. And I love that philanthropic why. I want to dive into that. So we got to shout out to the Connected Leaders Academy for 60 seconds. We're going to shout out to our sponsor. But when we come back, I want to talk more about how do we find that philanthropic why for ourselves, and how does that, shape everything we do moving forward.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So, when we talk about getting unstuck, doing something that's bigger than you is a great way to get unstuck. Serving mankind is a great way to get yourself out of your own head and helping other people. And that leads to you having breakthroughs in your life. So this philanthropic why, if philanthropy is the love of mankind, how do you help people to find that why for themselves? What does that process look like? And hey, how do you help them find that breakthrough? Where do I allocate my time and money?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rob. It starts with us with a series of questions because we believe really getting to know our clients on a deeper level, because some of the questions we ask, people really haven't thought about it. And we like to say, who set that thermostat in your life around giving, right? And we know what the thermostat represents. You can either go up or down. And a lot of times it's our parents, our grandparents, the experiences that we have is setting that thermostat for us. I remember I was on a podcast and talking to a guy, and he said, Barron, my parents, my dad specifically, gave a lot of money away, and we always felt like we didn't have anything because he was giving it away. They're on the opposite end of that spectrum. And so when he became an adult and started working, he said, I just wanted to make money. I didn't think about philanthropy because I saw it growing up and it had the adverse effect on him, right?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So when we talk about philanthropic why, we want people to think about what issues that you really care about. And prior to my transformation and becoming unstuck, I didn't have no issues I cared about. You could ask me, what do you care about? That would be me. I'm wearing.
So I'm going to keep all this money. It belongs to me. It needs to go to me.
I'm wearing my jacket, my Rotary. I'm a part of I'm a Rotarian, and the Rotarians line is service. The motto is service over self, and I love to say I was, self over service. But when you start understanding like what's the issues that you really care about, and we present all these different types of issues, and maybe one or two start resonating with you. You're like, you know what? I do kind of care about education more than I thought I did through the series of questions, right? And then once we figure out what that issue they start caring about, we start asking additional questions. And through this whole process, once they create this kind of mission statement, they'll realize what that why is and ready to pursue, those nonprofits that they want to invest in.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, it really is just asking people questions that they may have never been asked before.
Yeah.
And asking yourself questions you may have never been asked before. It can be that simple. And I find that to be so fascinating, especially as you step into the world of coaching and you have a coach and then you are a coach. And we all should, like, whether we are technically defined as a coach, we should be coaching somebody and have somebody coaching us throughout our life, mentor, mentee kind of situation, right?
Absolutely.
But it's amazing when you have somebody in your life who asks you questions that makes you actually think about things and answer things that you've never had to answer before, or maybe even think about before. These light bulbs go off. And it's really interesting to hear you talk about what you're saying. The people who have, they have enough money where they want to give this money back and help somebody, but they've never had anybody ask them the questions that sparks that inside of them to make them know where to put their resources.
Right.
I love that whole concept. It really does, for anybody listening or watching this right now, get around people who ask you questions, ask you good questions, and be somebody who asks people great questions, because the people that will come into your life because of that, you cannot even imagine the abundance of great people you'll have just because of that one trait. So before we started here, I had you answer a couple of questions, and one of those is a quote or saying that you live by, and you said, live in freedom every day.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? How do you live that out?
Yeah, for me, my mom suffered with depression for several years, and I remember during that season of her life, and God actually healed her, really delivered her, and she lived the last few years of her life just free, and it made me start thinking about, wow, there's something I'm missing. We're educated, you have, a little bit of means, and you have a business and all this stuff. And my mom was just as happy and peaceful as she could possibly be. And I'm running around, like a chicken with my neck cut off and trying to do everything, accomplish all this stuff. And I was like, I need to reevaluate what success means for me. Right. And I went through this kind of whole metamorphosis and watching her. And then she passed away, and I wrote her a poem, and it was called Living Free. And from that moment on, I started realizing there's a different way that I wanted to live my life. I wanted to take myself out of the rat race mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and start living a life that was free. I mean, when I say free, I mean abundant life, being able to take care of my family, help other people, serve my community. And for me, that's what freedom is.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many distractors and so many things that try to take our freedom. I mean, we could be killing it at work, and at home, it's miserable, right? And you're not free at home. And so being able to live in freedom every day means that you're being intentional about your freedom, and making sure if there's some problems that rise, if it requires communication, communicate. If there's some soul searching you need to do, soul search. All these things that you need to do to make sure you can live in freedom. Matter of fact, we have it's a trademark, live in freedom every day. So that's what it is. It means to me.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. I love that. And going back to the beginning of this conversation, it's the slowing down, caring more and slowing down. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to say, I used to tell my family this because, everybody's busy. I don't care who you are, you're busy. And I say, sometimes we're too busy to be better. And we can really be too busy to be better. Too busy to be better.
Right. Because you can't get better while you're constantly busy. Like you have to. Yeah, that's really interesting. How did you practically do this? Right? How do you practically go from constantly trying to achieve? And this is okay. So I'm going to set the stage for this for a second. I tell this story all the time, but it's necessary. It was a dream that I had back in 2021. My grandma had passed away, and she was in a dream with me, and she was driving, which she never did. She was grandma. She didn't drive, right? And I'm in the car, and she's holding my hand. I'm like a little kid, though. I'm like a 4-year-old. And while she's driving, she leans over and gives me a hug. And I said, and she says, I yell, "Grandma, what are you doing? You're going to wreck the car. Like, you're not paying attention." She goes, "Don't worry about where we're going. Just love me." And she said, don't worry about where you're going, just love people. Right. And it was this reminder that I use all the time, and I'm using it right now because you're resonating with that so strongly. You got to just focus on the people in your life and loving on them. And how do you do that better? Don't worry about the business and how you're going to grow it. Don't worry about what the next step is. Like, these things are, God's going to work all these things out if you are loving people and loving yourself and loving God correctly. Right.
Yeah.
And what did that look like for you? You had that metamorphosis, that revelation. How did you practically walk that out in that time?
Yeah, I started, the first thing I started doing was having a greater sense of appreciation. I mean, the gratitude, because I used to, my son, he taught me a lot. The first one, I gave you a story earlier. And one day he said to me, we have been gone all day at the park having a good time. And he said, Daddy, what's next? And I said, son, we're going home. I'm tired, And God reminded me in that moment, he said, that's you. He said, this is your life. What's next? What's next?
Wow.
What's next? Right. And during that same time, that's when the metamorphosis was really happening. And I said, man, I need to, one, appreciate and celebrate where I am in that moment. Right. And not trying to think ahead to what's the next step. Strength finder, my number one strength is strategy. So I'm a strategic guy. I'm thinking about the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And God said, I love that about you, but you're taking away from, you being grateful and thankful for the moments and the things that I blessed you with. And that was the first part of it, is really getting that into my spirit and how I operate. And now, I would buy some non-alcoholic juice for my wife and I were celebrating with the kids. We'll do toast, we'll go out for dinner. I mean, we'll write cards to each other. That was awesome. You made, all A's or whatever it was. It seemed kind of trivial, but we would take the time and celebrate it. Yeah. And that recalibrated me in terms of how I thought about things, how I thought about success, because I started thinking about success, not just something grand and big, but success was the fact that I was taking the time and doing these things with my family and in my community and the things that really was important to me.
Oh, yeah, man, that's success, right?
That's success all day.
Yeah, that's success. Taking the time with the people you love to really appreciate them and slowing down to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really, really good.
Yeah.
Barron, this is such a wonderful conversation. I love this so much. And I appreciate your time and I appreciate what you do. And the fact that you've made a life out of this now, of teaching people how to be philanthropic and where to put their time, where to put their energy. So if they want to check you out, they want to find out more about you, barrondamon.com, BARRONDAMON.com. They can find you on LinkedIn, Barron J. Damon.
Yep.
Find BOLCC, the Business of Life CC, on Facebook.
Yep.
What do you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
I would say, as it relates to philanthropy, start where you are. You don't need a lot of money. You don't even have to have a lot of time or talent, but use what you have. And I think that's the most important thing for us and hopefully for your listeners. Think about a random act of kindness. You could be in the grocery store, and I've done it, and people flip in, they know they don't have the money. Let me go to the car and get my wallet. No, I'm going to take care of that for you. Right. Mm-hmm. So start where you are. And once you do that, you'll start getting some momentum around. Maybe you're not ready to give a monthly donations, but maybe that random act of kindness will stir you up enough and you'll get excited about the impact that you're making on a small scale that will begin to develop into something much greater. And we would love to help and support you. I tell people, and I have a PDF that I can give to your listeners. That's it says take action. As a take action PDF. Even if you don't hire me as a coach, and if you start doing this stuff, I still win. right? And that's what we want everybody to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing is too, that when you start to give like that, you start to look for opportunities, right? So it's not like I'm going to the grocery store, I got to get out of here as fast as possible. It's like, I'm going to linger for a minute and look for an opportunity. How can I help somebody? How could I give somebody a smile? How could I be present for somebody in a moment?
Yeah.
And it can start there at that simple level. I really valued this conversation because I love how you take philanthropic efforts down to a very practical day-to-day level of something. It might not even be your money, it's your time that you're putting into something. And that helped me today reshape how I look at philanthropy. And that's been super helpful, man. So thank you so much for being a part of the Unstuck movement.
Well, thank you for having me, Rob. I really appreciate it. And I had a great time talking to you today.